Throughout its many years, the McDonald's menu has ebbed and flowed like a tide of beef and potatoes. What started as a simple 9-item selection eventually grew into a 3-digit catalog of America's finest and fastest cuisine. Well, fastest anyway. Still, you can't make a McMuffin without breaking a few eggs, and not every new McDonald's product has stood the test of time. Some of your faves may have even ridden off into the sunset with Mayor McCheese. So today, we're combing through the history of the McDonald's menu. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. After that, let us know in the comments what other fast food menus you'd like to hear about. Okay, time to take Doc Brown's DeLorean to the drive-thru. In the late 1930s, before Maurice and Richard McDonald ever thought up their first Speedy service restaurant, the two brothers owned and ran a hot dog stand. After a few years of saving, they were then able to open their first brick-and-mortar restaurant in California's San Bernardino in 1940. The brothers called this original car-hop drive-in McDonald's Famous Barbecue, and their first menu featured their famous barbecued beef, ham, and pork. While burgers were listed beneath those highlighted barbecue selections, so too were tamales, cheesy french fries, chili, hamburger steaks, and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Add in some People magazines at the cashier, and that's a grocery store, friend. As the 40s dragged on, the brothers noticed that almost all of their profits came not from their featured barbecue, but from their burgers. So in 1948, they closed down their original operation to start fresh with a pared-down menu that sold only burgers, potato chips, ice cream, apple pie, coffee, and soda. It didn't take long for them to switch out the chips for fries, and heading into the 1950s, the McDonald's brothers were ready to turn their streamlined menu into a whole new brand. In 1953, the McDonald brothers opened their first ever Speedy service location in Phoenix, Arizona. This location brought with it an all-new building style, designed specifically for an assembly line-like kitchen process. It likewise featured the brand's first ever set of golden arches. Most important, though, was the food. This location's 9-item menu advertised hamburgers, cheeseburgers, french fries, and malt shakes, along with 5 different beverages including coffee, Coke, root beer, milk, and a mysterious orange drink. And there's nothing more appealing at a fast food restaurant than a mystery. Shortly after, as the story goes, traveling milkshake machine salesman Ray Kroc saw what the McDonald's brothers were up to and opened a McDonald's location of his own in Des Plaines, Illinois, just 2 years later. For its grand opening, this location touted in advertisements that the McDonald's brand had already sold over 15 million hamburgers, a tally that has continued to this very day. And nothing controversial with Ray Kroc ever happened again. In 1963, McDonald's tried to cater to its Catholic customers fasting during Lent by making their first ever beefless burger, the Hula Burger, featuring 2 slices of cheese and a thick slice of pineapple between 2 buns. Ooh, wonder if you can dip it in the mystery orange drink. Meanwhile, in Ohio, McDonald's franchisee Lou Groen started testing out his own beefless sandwich made from fish, and he took his idea all the way to Ray Kroc himself. Reportedly, Ray Kroc loved the Hula Burger and thought fish would only stink up his restaurants. Still, he made a deal with Groen. If Groen's fish sandwiches outsold Kroc's beloved Hula Burgers, Groen's idea would find itself a place on the nationwide menu. The Hula Burger was thereafter decimated by the arrival of the Filet-o-fish sandwich, and in 1965, this fishy witch became the brand's first new permanent menu item. Kroc got rocked. This decade also saw the 1964 introduction of the McDouble hamburger, which only lasted until 1967 when it was pulled from the menu for the next 30 years. McDonald's also tried to fight off the fast food market gains made by the rapidly growing Arby's by, in 1968, releasing a roast beef sandwich of their own. Even though this new sandwich sold well, its creation required every McDonald's location to purchase costly new meat slicers, an extra expense that made the roast beef sandwich a short-lived clapback to the big brown hat. Still, the 1960s had one more trick up its sleeve for the burgeoning McDonald's empire. In 1967, McDonald's franchisee Jim Delegati made the world's first Big Mac cheeseburgers, and he sold them at his Uniontown, Pennsylvania location for 45 cents a pop. The Big Mac proved such a hit that, by the very next year, Delegati's creation got its national rollout, making the Keystone state-created Big Mac a keystone of the McDonald's franchise. The 1970s kicked off with California franchisee Al Bernardin's 1971 invention of the Quarter Pounder with cheese. Apparently, Bernardin thought the McDonald's other menu options were too bready, and he wanted a burger that put meat front and center. This heroic meat-forward option was so successful that in 1973, the Quarter Pounder was added to the national menu. Meanwhile, in 1972, another California franchisee, Herb Peterson, was set to make an even bigger splash in response to the demands of his early rising customers. That year, Peterson's invention, a little thing called the Egg McMuffin, entered test markets at 63 cents a sandwich. It spent 3 years coming and going from select locations before finally getting its own national release in 1975. And just 2 years later, McDonald's launched its first ever breakfast menu. This original menu, while keeping the Egg McMuffin front and center, featured hotcakes, scrambled eggs, sausage, hash browns, and danishes. That same year, Guatemala franchisee Yolanda Fernandez de Cofino began to make the company's first ever children's menu. While Fernandez de Cofino's original Menu Ronald featured a burger, a small fry, and a sundae, its first U.S. iteration, which launched nationally in 1979, also contained Keebler cookies, a Cracker Jack surprise toy, and a soda instead of a sundae. Still, not all was groovy in 1970s McDonald land. For a brief time, McDonald's sold the short-lived onion nugget and the reviled chopped beef steak sandwich, along with the McPizza, which would come and go from the menu like the dad in that Cats in the Cradle song. In the late 1970s, after the U.S. saw a nationwide decline in beef sales, McDonald's brought on famed chef Rene Arend to spice up their menu with some beefless alternatives. And one of Arend's first major contributions to the McDonald's menu was the ever-luxurious McRib. The McRib lasted from 1981 to 1985 before disappearing till 1989, when it then hung around until 2005. In the years since, it's come and gone like a pork-filled breeze, easy to enjoy, impossible to contain. Still, Arend had a few more tricks up his sleeve. While McDonald's didn't seem to care for his chicken pot pie idea, they did, in 1980, move forward with his idea for a crispy chicken sandwich, the McChicken. But in an uncharacteristic strikeout for the chef, this original McChicken proved to be a total flop. Luckily for the company, they already had something far bigger cooking on the back burner, and after 4 years of testing, it was finally ready for its national debut. Thus, in 1983, the Chicken McNugget became yet another enduring staple of the McDonald's menu. The McNuggets' arrival booted the McChicken from the menu, which was resurrected in 1988 and has ever since lived in the tiny McNuggets' far-reaching shadow. Shortly after the McNuggets' arrival, McDonald's also tried their hand at lettuce and tomatoes, which historically had turned fast food buns into wet mush. Their solution? To make a bisected styrofoam container capable of holding buns and a meat patty on one side and lettuce, tomato, and pickles on the other. They called it the McDLT, and this build-it-yourself burger lasted 3 years on the menu before customers got tired of doing all that extra labor just to eat a sandwich. Also short-lived was the Cheddar Melt, which dropped nationwide in 1988 and featured a beef patty, grilled onions, and a creamy cheddar cheese on a rye bun. The Cheddar Melt performed terribly though, lasting less than a year. The 80s also saw the introduction of McDonald's first ever salads, which gave those lettuce and tomato munchers something else to chew on, all the way until the COVID-19 pandemic showed them the door. The 90s were a strange time for McDonald's, as they were for many of us. Aside from the 1991 successful introduction of the breakfast burrito and the 1998's wide release of the McFlurry, the company's corporate heads seemed to throw as much as they could against those red and white tiled walls, but nothing seemed to stick. The company kicked off 1990 with the introduction of Mighty Wings, which were just chicken wings with spicy breading. Mighty Wings proved relatively successful, and they lasted almost a decade and a half before being pulled from restaurants for good, aside from a brief resurgence in 2013. Then, as the early 90s kicked into gear, McDonald's came out with a whole assortment of doomed-from-the-start menu items, including chicken fajitas, catfish sandwiches, pasta, Hot Pocket-like McStuffins, and the delectable McLobster. During this time, to attract a more health-conscious crowd, a low-fat burger called the McLean Deluxe also came out, making it all the way to the early 2000s before also being pulled for good. Opposite the McLean Deluxe was McDonald's now infamous supersize option, which allowed customers to order a larger-than-large size until 2004, right around the time a certain movie came out. The 90s second half then saw the colossal $200 million marketing failure known as the Arch Deluxe. The Arch Deluxe was essentially a fancy quarter pounder on a potato bun, meant to launch a new premium burger lineup advertised specifically for adults. After lukewarm sales, though, it was discontinued in the year 2000. McDonald's kicked off the new millennium with the introduction of their fruit and yogurt parfaits. While these parfaits would last, like the salads before them, all the way until the COVID-19 pandemic, other items debuted in the early aughts would fail to launch. These included the McPhilly cheesesteak and the chicken flatbread, along with corn dogs and the always kinetic mixed salad shakers, which was, let's be honest here, just a salad in a cup. Then 2002 saw the creation of the now-defunct Dollar Menu, while 2003 saw the introduction of one of the McDonald's newest mainstays, the sweet and savory McGriddle. As the decade wore on, the company also released the on-again, off-again chicken selects, the sometimes resurrected snack wraps, the short-lived but popular McSkillet burritos, and the Southern-style chicken sandwich, which came back in 2019 under a new McCrispy identity. Then, at the height of the aughts, McDonald's renovated their U.S. restaurants to at last be capable of serving their already decades-old international McCafe lineup of lattes, mochas, espressos, and cappuccinos. Around this time, the company once again tried its hand at a premium burger. This time, they called it the Angus Burger, and a whole Angus lineup would live out nearly 4 years of premium status on the McDonald's menu before ultimately getting pulled. In the 2010s, McDonald's introduced all-day breakfast, their short-lived buttermilk chicken tenders, and a lineup of bacon-centered products, including cheesy bacon fries, the quarter-pounder bacon, and the Big Mac bacon. All the while, to maintain a profit, the company's Dollar Menu had to become the Dollar Menu and More, which then eventually turned into McPick 2 before settling into its current variation, the $1, $2, $3 menu, which makes you sound like an auctioneer. With the 2020 onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, McDonald's had to scale back its operations. Many fan favorites were temporarily cut from the roster, including all-day breakfast, their lineup of salads and grilled chicken sandwiches, and a variety of other, more cumbersome menu items. Over time, many of these items have made their triumphant return, while others, like the company's salads and their snack wraps, evolved into something entirely new, like a Pokemon, which have been known to appear at McDonald's. So what do you think? Which McDonald's menu era was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.